Information fueled.
Opinion driven.
This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
6:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Appreciate you being here. Along with KGB producing, Joan Jones is in the WTN newsroom. And the latest on Donald Trump's canceling of Joe Biden's pardons. I'm having a hard time deciding which story I like more. The canceling of Biden's pardons or all of the Tren Aragua, well, not all of them, sadly, but these gangbangers being sent to El Salvador. They're both great stories. And no matter where you turn, and I feel like I've said this a couple of times now, no matter where you turn, there is good news at every turn. There was some good economic news yesterday, some great polling news for Donald Trump as well. And I think that's part of what is sending the Democrats into such hissy fits as the Trump administration continues to do really well. But as we all know, President Trump blew everybody's mind early Monday morning when he decided that he would be canceling the pardons of Joe Biden because he used Autopen. But it's not about the Autopen. And you are going to hear me say that probably 15 times during this monologue because, like usual, the leftist media, they're really obfuscating the truth. It's not about the Autopen. It is about Joe Biden's state of mind or lack thereof. So this will obviously, as you know, and we talked about this yesterday, this is going to impact Liz Cheney, Anthony Fauci, the Biden family, the entire January 6th committee, and so forth. Now, this became a heated topic last night on CNN with Scott Jennings. Of course, we all love Scott, and he is up against, I think it was 4 crazed progressives who are just spitting mad at what Donald Trump has done.
You have to be fair about it. If you say that it's a problem to not run this by DOJ,
no,
it's got to be a problem to not run other
little transparency.
He pardoned 1,600 January 6th convicted January 6th rioters, including people who assaulted
and talk about doing it for months.
And yeah, but it didn't go.
There's no question that some unnamed family member did it on his behalf. We don't know that about Biden.
Just to be intellectually honest, you would also have to say that should have gone through a process, and it did not.
Well, to be intellectually honest, why are you denying all of the mainstream reporting about who was actually running the Biden White House?
That's a change,
including reporting.
You were just saying that this had not been run by DOJ. But
tonight we are all about changing topics when questions are being asked, but I just want to note that is not what we were discussing.
The problem is,
I love how, you ever notice this with Scott Jennings, where when he stops talking, you've then got these 4 people just, dying to chime in. But again, the question isn't about the Autopen. The question is about Joe Biden's state of mind. Many presidents have used Autopen. I mean, it goes back years and years, actually, this process. The question is actually about whether or not Biden actually knew what was going on. Daily Mail has this whole thing this morning reporting the first to use the type of Autopen was actually Harry Truman. And all presidents except George W. Bush have since also used it, including Donald Trump. George W. Bush commissioned the Justice Department way back when to look into whether or not using the Autopen was actually constitutional. And they did come back and they said yes. Again, it's not about the Autopen. It is about Joe Biden's state of mind. And did he actually know what was going on? The media is trying to make this look like it was about the Autopen, but it is about Joe Biden's state of mind. Just like, this is typical of the media. So think about this, just if I can divert 1 second. Mahmoud Khalil, that story. They kept trying to say, oh, it's about free speech. It's not about free speech. This story about Mahmoud Khalil is not about free speech. It is about the fact that he was encouraging vandalizing. He was encouraging the assault of Jewish students at Columbia University. He is affiliated with this organization that does support Hamas. There's a dozen different reasons why Mahmoud Khalil should be deported. But the press is trying to make this about free speech. Just like in this case, they're trying to make the Autopen story about Autopen when it's not. It is about Joe Biden's mental cognition at the time that he was in office.
But first on the president's post overnight saying that the pardons that were issued by President Biden preemptively to members of the January 6th committee, that they're now null and void. Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by Autopen, as he said?
All right, so you hear exactly how she framed the question. Caitlin Collins, by the way, from CNN, of course. And this was the response from Caroline Leavitt.
Did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Biden is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out. Sean.
And of course, everybody loved Caroline Leavitt when she said to Caitlin Collins,
the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out. Sean.
I love that.
If you have an inquiring mind.
Slam dunk on Caitlin Collins. You know, there have been so many times that we have talked about the lack of willingness of the media to really look at matters that would not portray Joe Biden in the best of light. One of the things, and we talked about this way back when, was when the New York Post came out with the Hunter Biden laptop story. And instead of these other media, because you know how it works, right? Well, Joan, you certainly know how it works. Story comes out, New York Post, Hunter Biden's laptop. And instead of the New York Times and the Washington Post and ABC and CBS and NBC and CNN all looking at that story and then continuing on with the investigation or continuing on with the story, they were all just really fast to just deny it.
Dismiss it, yep.
They dismissed it. They denied it. They tried to destroy its credibility. And then, of course, we had the 51 former intelligence agents that came out and past and current intelligence agents that came out and say, oh, it's Russian disinformation. And then that's all the media did. There was a lack of journalistic interest or curiosity in looking into that story, where any other story, you would see the media piling on. So if it's, okay, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and you've got this laptop, let's look at where the laptop came from. Let's look at the allegations. Let's tap into our resources in the FBI. Nobody did that. And the New York Post, their story was spiked so that it would help Joe Biden. And so I love when, you know, you've got Caitlin Collins.
The Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out. Sean.
Here's the funny thing. So when the media and the reporters, I'm going to air quote that, the reporters or the narrative peddlers, they refuse to look into exactly what's going on with this story, well, then that just tells you that they don't really care, because it's a story that makes Joe Biden look bad, Donald Trump look good. But here's the other part. If they really dive into this story, then they will once again be faced with having to deal with the fact that they ignored Joe Biden's cognitive impairment for 4 years. Details straight ahead. 6:16, time to check the roads on WTN. Today, a high of 71 and sunny. Right now, 44 degrees at Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out. Sean.
I feel like we're back in 2024 when the mainstream media was reporting that Biden was sharp as a tack before, of course, George Clooney told them that it was okay to write about and talk about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. everybody knew that Joe Biden was not sharp as a tack. He wasn't. Everybody knew it, and everybody knows that now. So when Caitlin Collins says, do you have any evidence of that Joe Biden, he didn't know what he was auto-penning or whatever? Let's just look at what the Wall Street Journal reported, and the New York Post, and Fox News, eventually the Washington Post, eventually the New York Times, and yes, even George Clooney, where they came out and they did say Joe Biden is not fit for office in one way or another. They said that Joe Biden, who was it? I forget who it was. There was a congressman, maybe you remember, Joan, who was a congressman? Maybe it was a senator, where Joe Biden would sign things and he had absolutely no idea what the heck he was even signing. I forget who that, Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson came out and he said, and this was about a month or two ago, where he said that Biden signed something and Biden had no idea what the heck he just signed. I'll have to find that story. But if you accept the fact that Joe Biden didn't always understand or know exactly what legislation he was signing, then you can't sit here and tell me that he knew what legislation was being auto-penned. There's absolutely no way. And that is the point about these pardons.
That story was that President Biden didn't know. He had no clue whether or not he signed an executive order. That House Speaker Mike Johnson brought that to light. So Barry Weiss said that Biden didn't think he was lying when he said that he never issued the order to freeze new liquid natural gas export permits.
Okay.
But he did sign that, and he just didn't remember signing it. So that's the thing. That's what it was over.
There's obvious evidence, and I just rattled off five different newspapers, television, cable, whatever, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, 5 different journalistic entities who all have come out and said Joe Biden was not all there during his administration. So when Trump says his whole justification is Biden used Autopen and we don't have confidence that Biden actually knew what was being signed in his name. And so for Trump to say, you know what? I'm just going to call it, and I'm going to open up investigations. I'm going to dismiss these pardons for Liz Cheney and Anthony Fauci, the January 6th committee. I think Trump is basically daring the other side to say, okay, then you prove to us that Joe Biden was mentally fit for office. That's number one. Remember what the special counsel said when they're looking at Joe Biden and looking into his own classified documents issue. And they said, well, we're not going to press any charges because the jury would look at him and say, well, he's just a forgetful old man, right? I mean, there's all this evidence out there that Biden would have no idea what was being auto-penned in his name. And so to me, this is Donald Trump saying, you know what? Then you prove that he was actually fit for office, and you prove that he knew what was being auto-penned or signed in his name. Because there's plenty of evidence that shows that he had no idea what was going on. And if that is the case, then Trump is right. Now, will this actually come to fruition? Will this probably go to, I don't know, Supreme Court, wherever it's going to go? Yeah, that's probably ultimately what is going to happen. But I mean, I think Donald Trump is spot on. And by the way, again, the reason the media isn't real happy with this story is because once again, it brings to light the fact that they ignored his mental impairment, and they did for a lot of years. So it's a really interesting story. And it's actually, to be honest, one of my favorite stories that we've had in a long time, because not only does it implicate the Biden administration, but it also implicates the media as well. And I just love those kind of stories. It is 6:22. Joan Jones is in the WTN newsroom. Joan, what's up?